What I'd like to do is start a conversation about the private lives of the Anunnaki and first contact with the people of Earth, the intimate inside story of our cultural and genetic origins. First of all, we understand that the Anunnaki were not gods, they were not supernatural beings, they were ancient astronauts, they were men and women with superior technology. We are a bit stymied by the scarcity of solid evidence of their existence, though. We have to depend primarily on Sumerian texts and seals, which are about 6,000 years after the fact. These are pretty sketchy material. The only actual fleshed out story we have was written by the Greek philosopher Plato about Atlantis, a civilization that he claimed flourished almost 12,000 years ago. He also describes a great flood that ends the civilization, a flood that interestingly coincides with the end of the Ice Age. This is a catastrophe that's recorded somehow, some way, in virtually every ancient culture in the world. That pre-flood world that Plato describes was inhabited by human men and women and, what he calls gods. Gods that divvied up the planet. Apparently every god got his or her share. Poseidon, who is known as god of the horse, got Atlantis. And he also got the girl, in this case, a native girl. Here's the actual quote from Plato's dialogues. And the god Poseidon, receiving for his apportionment the island of Atlantis, begat children by a mortal woman called Cleito. He fell in love with her and had intercourse with her. He also begat and brought up 5 pairs of twin male children. Now, I want to tell this as a dramatic narrative, a novel, but like I said, I'm stymied because I have exactly 2 sentences about the family dynamics of my protagonists, the mom and dad of the first advanced civilization on Earth, and I'm left wondering how Poseidon and Cleito ended up with 5 sets of twin sons. Statistically, that's close to impossible. Now, how am I going to fill in the gaping holes in that story? How do I get inside the Anunnaki's heads so I can understand them as living, breathing, feeling individuals? Well, what a historical fiction author, or in this case, a prehistorical fiction author does, is first to plumb the depths of her most trusted sources. I go to my heroes of prehistorical research in fields such as geology, archaeology, climatology, astronomy, paleoanthropology, and evolutionary science, as just a few. Then I start putting the facts together, making connections, something like a detective does. I begin setting the scene, painting a picture of what the Earth was like 12,000 years ago, and what the people were like who lived back then, right at the exact time the Anunnaki arrived, the time of first contact. Then taking the raw facts, I piece them together with the stories of the gods and humans, Plato's writings and the Sumerian texts, and what I know personally about human nature and psychology. And voila, I end up with an intimate insider's perspective that describes what it would have been like to be Isis or Athena or Poseidon, and to be the primitives who were confronted by these strangers with godlike powers. So why is any of this important? The way I look at it is if this is not myth, but as Plato claims, the true history of the world, then these relationships of 12,000 years ago must have deeply impacted our species' evolution. And if they did, then the Anunnaki are our ancestors. We're walking around today with their DNA inside us. I find this fascinating. If you do, please join me on Friday night at Contact in the Desert, and we can continue the conversation.